Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a massive smorgasbord of a game that finds itself surprisingly approachable in the moment-to-moment gameplay, despite its bulk. Like the threads spun by the Nornir, it weaves into a meaty saga you can get lost in. You can play dice, build a community, sail, fish, hunt, raid, ride, pillage, plunder, solve, rap, discover, uncover, hack, sneak, slash, form alliances, fight, drink, love, trick or treat, do diplomatic dealings, and get your hair done. It is verbs, the game. So there is but one question left. Is it enough? Beware, there may be minor spoilers up until the story chapter, at which time I'll give you the major spoiler warning. The promotional videos of Odyssey were enough for me to favor Cassandra as the protagonist over Alexios. Here though, I didn't have a preference starting out between male or female Eivor, so I let the animus decide. It chose female. Unlike Odyssey, you can jump back and forth between the two at any time. After playing a while through the story, my wife's curiosity dictated I switch to the male actor. I ended up flipping several times, but spent most of the game as male Eivor for a single reason: beard customization. Oh yeah, dude. One thing I rarely changed were my tattoos. You can obtain new tats and hairstyles from shops in the world, or by chasing these floating papers around, straight out of classic Creed games. I often didn't bother them. More on that later. Ultimately, my opinion is that both actors do a good job with Eivor. As I neared the end, I started finding myself liking the person of Eivor, but fundamentally disagreeing with their whole outlook, which is fine. I think it's good to walk in the shoes of others. But if we compare the three most recent AC games, Bayek was like a hometown hero.
This is for you.
While Cass was a charming, helpful mercenary.
Happy to help.
Eivor is, put simply, an invader. Yes, she loves her people. Many do. Yes, he's tolerant to all peoples being part of his big family on the land he stole, but I wasn't always clear what she wanted. Most of the time, Eivor was just following his big bro and starting crap. Then she did her own crap. All that said, there's enough to mention here to make Eivor likable.
Deceived by children and shouting at wolves. I was a warrior once.
They aren't some meat-headed smasher. Practicing mindfulness and waxing poetic balanced well with the raider side.
Wise Odin utters the words.
Right, this is not what I wanted. Stop it, will ya?
It's refreshing to have dialogue options that aren't misleading.
To your father.
By that, I mean most of the time the lines you select as a response are the very ones Eivor repeats.
You seem strangely familiar.
It's sort of a meta way to mirror the fact that Eivor speaks clearly and bluntly.
You have an axe in your head.
Is that to say Eivor does everything the player asks of him? Well, Assassin's Creed has come a long way in many aspects. Ubisoft is at the top of their game here, in that it feels like a game made by pros that know what to focus their attention on, as well as a lot of things to avoid. In its best moments, it feels wonderfully polished. And then, at some point, you'll feel a hiccup that reminds you that you're playing a video game. I experience this break most often in the traversal. This is a massive game full of exploration, but moving through it sometimes feels, for lack of a better word, clumsy. Not clumsy like Death Stranding where you fall down a lot. In fact, Death Stranding's traversal felt honest. Sam responded to every little rock. Obviously that wouldn't suit the playstyle here, and I love Death Stranding and I would not like for Assassin's Creed to adopt its traversal. But there are just so many dang times I felt like there were no rules about how you can move Eivor around. You can jump over this rock, but not that one. You can break open this door, but depending on your weapon, you have to stand at just the right distance. Eivor gets stuck. The horse gets stuck. You can put the horse on autopilot, but then the horse is like, I can't travel to that location. I don't know why your Viking horse sounds like Barney Fife. Andy? And yeah, the parkour sucks. I'm sorry. I refuse to keep chasing those papers. There's a sprint button. It's back. Personally, I wish they'd just remove sprinting altogether like they did in Odyssey. I definitely prefer getting around in that game. I never quite feel like I'm sprinting here. There's like stamina, which I always hate. The horse is so slow near a town, and not much faster elsewhere. I miss having no fall damage. You can almost get rid of it with an ability, but not fully like in Odyssey. So yeah, Eivor and the mount often feel clumsy. Walking, running, climbing, descending. But to be honest, it wasn't until late game that I started becoming frustrated with the traversal. Perhaps I was just getting impatient with the multitude of almost endings. In truth, moving through the world here was often incredibly satisfying. But not because of Eivor. Because of the world itself.
You've never seen mountains, have you? Or deep fjords, like a giant's axe wound? Snow sparkling like a blanket of jewels. That is splendor.
Well, if your homeland is so splendorful, why come to England at all?
You can't grow crops on a blanket of jewels.
The world may be the game's best asset. And yet, I never really loved it like I did in Ghost of Tsushima or even Odyssey. Sorry to keep bringing back Odyssey, but this is a direct sequel to that. Now, it's so wonderfully diverse, yet nothing majorly stood out to me. I will probably think back on this game and just think green and snow. I had a better sense of place when reading the descriptions in the menu, like of legendary elf-inhabited fairy tale woods. Yet while in them, you're just trying to get through them. There are exceptions, like the cairns. I didn't do many, but I found them peaceful. Why is it that Ghost had me spending hours in the photo mode, but I barely touched it here? It's a pretty world. Most of the time I ended up in photo mode was due to the tendency I have in battles where I start clicking in both sticks because I get all spazzy and nervous. By no means is this game a slouch in the graphics department. Far from it. But maybe it's because of the narrative, I always felt like a tourist in this England. Never home. I love open worlds, but I think I'm starting to see the seams between the good ones and the great ones. I feel for the developers. They have to deal with people like me that say, it's too crammed, have less stuff of better quality. And those that say, the world is too big and empty, give us more. Your mileage may vary, but I found this game a bit crowded. Hey, game developers, maybe let there be some open spaces sometimes. Instead of, copy pasting a 3-pack of wolves everywhere you're afraid we're gonna set down the controller and never come back. You gotta hear this knowing that I love open worlds, and reading my script, I feel like I sound so negative, but it's only because I appreciate this type of game, and I've spent so much time in them. So an improvement over previous entries is how they handle side quests. Every region has a plethora of 3 types of markers. The first type are the mysteries, denoted in blue. They have all but eliminated the objective-based side quests that would fill up your menu and ask you to repeat one of a few actions. Instead, you have interactions that are often brief, where you actually need to listen to what the person is saying, and then use common sense to complete the event.
It appears to be a battle scar.
It's such a great replacement for the mindless map markers where you just run from place to place and got the same old sob stories about, there are wolves in that there cave, go kill them. Barney's back. These account for the majority of mysteries, but in addition, you have altars, which give you skill points for handing over things like specific types of fish. You have mushroom quests where you go on a psychedelic journey and solve a puzzle. Those are far out, man. Sorry. There are other types, but I think it's best to discover some of the mysteries yourself. Then, there's flighting.
Oh, to beat such a bracket will surely be fun.
These are the so-called rap battles where you best your opponent by choosing responses that match the rhyme, the meter, and even the context.
What's it like feigning hugeness? You're not but a gnome.
You've earned your winnings.
I did every single one of these because they're often well written in that the NPC always has some colorful reason for flighting. And Eivor's responses are some of the best moments with the character, in my opinion. It's just plain fun. After a while, I definitely stopped going out of my way for the artifacts, which are indicated with white map markers. As I said, I didn't care enough about collecting every tattoo via an awkward parkour chase. I still honestly don't see the point of the Roman artifacts. Unless I'm missing something, the reward for collecting a ton of these masks is more stone statues to put around your Viking settlement. Then there are treasure maps like Black Flag had. Those are classified as artifacts instead of treasure, but okay. There's a dice game called Orlog that a lot of people really like. I didn't get into it, personally, but I could see the appeal of spending hours in this game within a game. Then there's the treasure, the gold markers. I've said before on this channel that a guilty pleasure of mine is collecting every piece of cosmetic gear. This is the first time where I just stopped after a while. They're well designed, it's not that. For the first half of my playthrough, I got excited when I saw the weapon/armor icon. But after dozens of times finding a key, getting in fights, and navigating through a cave, I just couldn't be bothered by it anymore. Once you get every kind of weapon, you really don't need to keep searching. I see that as both good and bad. I like that any old rusty sword you pick up could be upgraded to a top-tier weapon. You can find books of knowledge, which unlock abilities in the abilities menu. Half are melee and half are archery-based. I would have liked more stealthy ones. Rarely is there a treasure just laying around for the taking. That makes sense. So gold markers are basically code for combat or some find the key scenario. While in Atlantis during Odyssey's final DLC, I predicted that the next AC would feature Vikings, and its DLC would be in Asgard. I was half right. This is already a full-fat beast of a game, so honestly, including all of Asgard feels straight up generous. The skill tree is interesting. It's a tree of little stat perks full of random junk like plus 0.4 of aid, like I'm some kind of math genius that can convert that into fun. But amongst this fluff are nestled abilities that are different from the abilities menu abilities. These are hidden by fog until you unlock the surrounding skills. Surely annoying to some, but I thought it was a neat idea. Plus, you can reset your skill points at any time. The combat is what you'd expect. Your options are somewhat expanded though, with one- and two-handed weapons. You'll likely find your own preferred style. Since Origins, I preferred speed over power with regard to weapons. I just don't have a lot of patience. I spend most of my time with a knife in my right hand and a hammer in the left. The knife allowed for fast basic attacks, and though slow to get started, the hammer would do devastating escalating damage that reminded me of the hammer from Super Smash Bros. As a Viking, Eivor favors loud and boisterous battle over sneaky stealthiness. I've always preferred the latter style. And I don't mean to paint it as though you can't use stealth here, but I will say it feels more grounded. No supernatural stealth here, aside from the old red outline to identify enemies. No zipping through the air like Cassandra. Not even your Raven, whose eyes you can look through, is able to track your enemies this time. That would be outlandish. Again, you can control a Raven and see through its eyes, but marking enemies is foolishness to Valhalla. I have missed some other things, like Origins, Sleep, and Berserk darts. Yeah, of all games, how does this one not have a Berserk mechanic? And I loved Odyssey's supernatural stealth abilities. But part of me is also glad they haven't just copy-pasted all the mechanics. It is its own game after all, and not everything has to appeal to me. Wow, not everything has to appeal to me. Self-realization. Why can't I use the back button to leave conversations? If they ever patch that, just ignore that statement. There's far better customization this time around. There's a slew of accessibility options as well. From the HUD to content, there are individual difficulty settings for combat, stealth, and exploration. Let me know how you played in the comments below. I mean, if you won, I ain't trying to give out homework. Composing the music, Jesper Kyd returns from Assassin's Creed 2 and teams up with Sarah Schachner from Origins. Origins was a score I initially felt was too off-brand for the ancient Egypt I'd come to love of the cinema. But then I actually came to love it. And writing the Viking songs is Norwegian artist Einar Selvik, who it turns out wrote music for the show Vikings and apparently even appeared on that show. Great pause music that does remind me of Origins, as opposed to Odyssey, which was a good song. It just, if you see my review, you know that didn't suit itself with its loud, brief loop. The boat songs were pretty good, but I mostly preferred hearing the stories while in the boat. That is, one sentence at a time until you pass a raidable area. Spoiler alert, the whole dang country is raidable, so you never hear a song or story in its entirety unless you're in the open seas of Norway.
Shouldn't be seen here.
Asgard had these horns that gave it its own flavor. I was excited to see that you could choose how often you hear the roaming music. I set that noise to maximum because I love jamming the tunes in my travels. However, it didn't seem to have much of an effect. I could have used more, honestly. And on that note, well, I hesitate to bring this up because it may be a bug that'll get patched out, or it could be a creative choice, but okay, here it goes. It felt to me like the music was missing in a few places. Moments that carried a lot of drama were sometimes silent. I'm not saying every moment needs music, but I don't know, maybe it's just because it stood out to me. If it was a choice, great. As I've said, not everything has to conform to my taste. But I think this music is good, and what I'm trying to say is I could have used more of it. And with that, alright, spoiler alert. Major spoilers will be discussed in the next 2 chapters. Major. So come back after playing the entire story, or slide right on through to the epilogue to get that cathartic satisfaction you've earned for making it this far. This will be my recap. Please take it with a grain of salt. I can only absorb so much lore, but my 10,000 foot high view of this game goes something like this. Fake throat clear. In Norway, Eivor's parents are killed by a rival clan that's led by a member of the Order of the Ancients. In the escape, Eivor is nearly killed by wolves and earns the name Wolf-Kissed. He's saved by Sigurd. Sigurd's family adopts Eivor. Sigurd's dad is a ruler of this tiny town. Years later, Sigurd's dad makes an alliance with King Harald, which means Sigurd is no longer the next in line for the tiny crown. Basim, a member of the Assassin's Creed, aka the Hidden Ones, convinces Sigurd to go make a new tiny town in England. Eivor goes with them. Eivor was Layla the whole time! You were Layla being Eivor the whole time! Eivor forms alliances one shire at a time. This is the bulk of the game. You also eliminate Order members as you go thanks to a mysterious informant. Odin can lick a duck. That guy's an asshole. Eivor goes to Vinland, which might be in Canada. I don't know, I'm not a geographer. Eivor comes back. Sigurd gets a big old chip on his shoulder thinking he's the chosen one because Basim told him he was. Sigurd is shaping up to be the big bad of the game. They find the world tree and say a bunch of Matrixy junk. They enter the Matrix. Eivor has an existential crisis and fights Odin. They leave the Matrix. Turns out Basim lied and Eivor is really the chosen one. And Basim is really the big bad. Sigurd was neither. He was just some guy and now he's cool now. Well, I guess he was Tyr, but you know. See, Eivor had all these visions earlier where he was someone called Havi that looked a lot like Odin and turns out these were memories. You were Layla being Odin being Eivor being Havi the whole time. You, Havi, Eivor, Odin, Layla fought Loki's kid who was a wolf and then drank a potion because they were gonna die in Ragnarok. But Loki had some of that potion too and his consciousness was put into Basim. Layla decides to stay in the Matrix with a fan service angel, which means Loki/Basim can now leave the Matrix. With Layla gone, now you're Basim in the modern day. Check out that wolf shirt. You were Havi, Odin, Eivor, Layla, Basim the whole time! Meanwhile, in the real world, King Alfred, who is obviously the leader of the Order, as you can see by his very detailed silhouette, was also the one who was snitching them all out to Eivor because, as it turns out, and in a big, unexpected twist, he was just an honest-to-God Christian the whole time. He decides he doesn't want to be a king or a cult leader and would rather bake a cake in a cottage, making him the most relatable character in the game. Then the game sort of ends, I guess? You get a key to Alfred's study where you can read all the fan fiction your heart desires. Congrats! You return to Basim's non-evil apprentice after clearing out every last member of the Order of the Ancients. He thanks you and asks you if you'd like to officially join the Assassin's Creed, and Eivor says, no. Roll credits! No. Just kidding, like last time, it never really ends, because you still have to buy your passport to Ireland and France, so if you're looking for closure, forget it. Whew. I hate story synopting. Anyway, there were a few times when I thought it would be over soon because I felt a natural inclination towards the story's conclusion, and then days later I'd laugh at the naivety of my younger self. At least all those endings in Return of the King felt like endings. Okay, now I'm just having fun. This is a sprawler of a game in every way, and the way I see it, it's just got more bang for my buck. It's an epic in every sense. You can date! Petra was Eivor's girlfriend through most of my playthrough. She's the huntress that you take, let's call it a vision quest with. Sigurd surprised me. He went from an entitled, I am the chosen one, god complex, to getting knocked down all the pegs. I found that redemptive in a refreshing way. A lot of us take ourselves too seriously. It's interesting and sad that all the Scandinavians are called Danes. It reminds me of Hell on Wheels' Swede.
I'm from Norway.
Scandinavia is Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, by the way. At least I think. I'm not a geographer. There are tons of fun nods and Easter eggs.
Trapdoor.
FÓLK was also in Vikings. What the FÓLK?
All of Norway laments the passing of King Ragnar. I cannot imagine the sorrow his warriors now feel.
I'm a fan of the show Vikings, and every time I heard the name Ragnar in this game,
Ragnar Lothbrok.
It was like hearing the name Jack in This Is Us. I hope people get that joke. If you don't watch This Is Us, then just in your memory, put the classic gamesman told a funny joke right there. I just don't remember what it was. Completing a particular quest rewards you with a letter that, when read aloud, melted me. It made me miss the character so much. Sorry to be so cryptic, but it's a small moment best experienced if you're not expecting it. So remember Retta from Origins? He's like 900 years old now.
Always nice to see a friendly face. So if you see any about, send them my way.
That explains the dad jokes. Let's talk about the spirit of the game. The Valhalla of it all. Man, the meta of that endgame. So Valhalla is basically an animus where you pretend to fight enemies that you always win against because the odds are in your favor because it's a lie built specifically for you and around you because you're the chosen one that will save us all. So in Valhalla, you'd live in a simulation forever fighting, always having the appearance of victory while the real world is out there. You could battle Odin forever, or you could put down your your axe and go talk to your loved ones. Jeez, Ubisoft. Why don't you pull a Nintendo and just ask if I want to turn the game off? I love it. It fascinates me. It challenges me. It's a game and it knows it's a game. It's a game in a game. It rocks. Oh my gosh. I'm the asshole. I have to lick a duck. The theme song of the show Vikings says, "More, give me more, give me more." This game is more. I can honestly say it is enough. And yet, I've got to return to the world. I want to return to the world. Who knows what wonders await? And it would seem we're just getting started.
Who has ever wandered through such forest, in a length of many miles, in a boundless expanse, without a path, without a goal, amid their monstrous shadows, their sacred gloom, without being filled with deep reverence for the sublime greatness of nature, above all human agency?